Hi, this is Ted. I got to talk quietly because my voice is going, and I want to keep my voice so I don't lose it totally. Okay. Have you ever noticed that prophets are obsessed with fear? They're also obsessed with control in the world. So all their prophecies tend to be, or most of them, how God is going to change this nation so they're in control. And their President Trump is right by their side. There's all kinds of end time thinking that they're falling into with this, which I don't have time to get into. In fact, I'm just going to focus on how politics and falling down a rabbit hole of politics can actually create fear, anger, and hatred. Now, I learned this in my own life. Years ago, one of my best friends at graduate school, he was brilliant, very smart. He actually has taught classes at Emory University since then, and he's publishing a book right now, Vampirism in the 19th Century. It's going to be something like that. He will be the go-to person for anybody who wants to know about 19th century ideas and how people thought about vampires. So it was interesting, very interesting character. Occasionally we talk on email. During school, I learned, we always talked about stuff, back and forth. But there's no way I could ever win any kind of argument or discussion with him because, number one, he had all kinds of information I had no clue about. And number two, he was just a good discusser, good arguer. Anyway, one day, it was after school. I mean, it's years later, I was hanging out with him for a short period of time. I went down to visit him. And while I was talking to him, I realized where he's getting all his information. And so I began, just because I wanted to understand, what is he, where's his head? Where does he get this stuff? And he was brilliant. And so I began reading magazines and publications and books and all kinds of stuff from the radical left point of view. And I found myself getting hooked. I found myself falling down a rabbit hole. I'll explain that one a little bit. I found myself demonizing people who didn't think like I did. Now, fortunately, all this time, I'm pastoring a church. I was a missionary first, pastoring a church. And I was still able to dig deep in the Bible. I could actually work hand in hand, bringing the politics with the Bible and all this kind of stuff. But the thing that really began getting to me is a couple of things. Number one, every one of these, I studied communism, I studied Marxism, I studied anarchism, the government form. I studied socialism, and I studied all these, and capitalism and other things as well. And what I realized is all of these have ideologies that are kind of way up there. I remember reading a quote from a communist who said, communism would work if we would ever really try it. He saw the corruption that entered the world of communism. And he realized Karl Marx had a great idea, but his followers and people who put it into action messed it up. That is the reality of any system. You have the idea, and once you put it into practice, human corruption, human greed, human ego gets in there. People will want to take control of things they shouldn't. People will want to do this and that, and it's just going to be a mess. And so I believed, and I've come to believe, and still believe it, that the best systems have opposites, have battles between parties, because they keep each other from gaining total control. And once total control comes, it sounds idealistic if it hasn't happened before, but it becomes tragedy. I remember saying that in a class, and I have a lot of Africans in my classes. And one African said, we had hoped, our country had dreams and hopes, and we were all excited when our president got in because he was going to change everything. But he turned out to be just as corrupt as the last one. You see, we have ideals, and that ideology is something, unfortunately, as good as it is, because a lot of these ideologies are good. They really want to serve people the best they can. The problem is putting into practice. All right, that's the first thing I learned. But the second thing was what's going on inside me. I was feeling more and more anger and hate towards the government and fear. More and more, they were evil. I was demonizing them from a left point of view. So the deeper in the rabbit hole I got, the more I felt the fear, the anger, and the hatred. And one day, it just, came out of the blue. I don't want to live hating. I don't think that's where the gospel was leading. I don't want to live in anger and fear. I don't think that's where the gospel is leading. So I quietly, I still read from time to time, just to keep up a little bit. But I put away a lot of the political stuff. Why? Because for me, it was a rabbit hole. And I just didn't need that. And I felt, and I really believe, that the gospel calls us to a different three things. Not anger, fear, and hate, but faith, hope, and love. And I felt like that's where I should be pursuing. After this all took place, weeks later, I ran into somebody who'd been down another rabbit hole, very similar to mine. He too had the fear, the anger, and the hatred. And he too grew tired of living in that pit. He came from the conservative point of view. And we talked it out, and we shared something in common. We had both been down different rabbit holes, but had the same hate, the same fear, and the same anger. And we both realized the solution was not in building those, but rather putting them aside and coming together in Christ. That's all I have today and for today. You all have a good one.